Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're doing a rapid-fire exploration of a really packed news day, one dominated by high-stakes negotiations and some surprising rulings, all set against the backdrop of a major U.S. holiday.
It's true. If you were trying to catch up on the news around November 11th, you just ran into this massive, almost impossible tension.
Exactly.
Our mission today is to sort through these headlines. You have everything from, the expected political drama of resolving the longest government shutdown in history to massive policy shifts in health and law.
And some incredibly complex international moves.
Right. We need to find those critical connections, the long-term implications that are sort of hidden in that short-term news cycle so you can see what truly matters.
I think the central tension is unavoidable. You have the country celebrating Veterans Day, a federal holiday meant for reflection, for unity, while at the same time grappling with all this political chaos and social stress.
We had the end of the longest shutdown, but the fallout, the flight delays, the uncertainty over food aid, that's far from over.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with that political breakthrough. So the biggest news, the thing that signaled the end of the paralysis, came late Monday night. The Senate finally passed a bill to end the 41-day federal government shutdown.
Which had been a 6-week political nightmare.
Total nightmare.
It was. And the way it passed tells you everything about the current state of Congress. The bill passed 60-40, but that margin, well, it relied entirely on a compromise brokered by moderate Democrats working directly with Republicans.
So they chose to open the government, even if it meant sacrificing a major political demand.
Exactly, and that's where the political pain comes in. The sources we saw noted this bipartisan move drew searing criticism from the Democratic Party's progressive wing.
So giving up on extending those expiring healthcare tax credits, was that seen as a massive tactical failure for the progressives? I mean, they held out for so long.
It sends a clear message that, for the moderates at least, pragmatic governance trumped policy leverage. The progressives were betting on maintaining those healthcare tax credits.
The ones that expired January 1st.
Right. But once the shutdown clock ran this long, the political pressure to just open the government became overwhelming. They lost that battle, but the government is moving again.
So what are the next steps?
The bill now heads to the House, which has been in recess since mid-September. A vote is expected as early as Wednesday, and President Trump has already signaled he'll accept the deal.
So the immediate crisis is solved, but the cost has been tallied. The Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, they ran the numbers on the economic impact of this 6-week standoff. What did they find?
They estimated that this specific shutdown will permanently cost the economy around $11 billion in lost activity.
Permanently.
And that's a key distinction here. It's not just a temporary dip. That permanent loss means economic activity that, can never be recovered. It's gone from future GDP calculations. It reduced our fourth quarter growth by a pretty significant 1.5 percentage points.
That's the financial toll. But the real-world consequences are still unfolding. Let's start with the air travel nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
The FAA staff shortage continued to get worse right through Veterans Day, leading to more flight cuts and major delays.
And this is a direct consequence of the shutdown's operational strain. The mandated cut to flights increased to 6% on Tuesday, and it's projected to hit a brutal 10% by Friday.
And you have to remember the calendar here. We are just weeks away from Thanksgiving.
Arguably the busiest travel period of the entire year.
Yeah.
This chaos is creating a major crisis for travelers and for the airlines.
And then there's the food security crisis.
Yeah.
The delay of SNAP payments, that's the food aid program, it's causing widespread anxiety.
Yeah, one of the stories highlighted a Pennsylvania caretaker who was down to just rice and ramen for their family. I mean, that's an anxiety the CBO can't quantify.
No.
That caretaker's story is the real human cost of this deadlock. And this whole situation is amplified by uncertainty at the Supreme Court.
How so?
The court is expected to rule on whether to block states from proactively providing full benefits to cover the gap. And this has created a massive disparity, a patchwork of benefits, where some states get full payments and others get nothing.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Shifting from congressional gridlock to, well, these monumental rulings in major corporate agreements.
Right. While Washington was paralyzed, stability and policy wins were being delivered elsewhere.
Like at the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. We saw a key legal right affirmed. The court rejected an appeal that was seeking to overturn the 2015 Obergefell v. Hodges ruling.
Which, of course, confirmed the legal status of same-sex marriage nationwide.
So that closes the door, at least for now, on a major avenue for conservatives seeking to revisit that landmark decision. It's a key element of legal stability for millions of Americans.
And then the big health policy win.
This was huge. Major pharmaceutical companies like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly reached a landmark agreement with the U.S. government.
Detail that agreement for us. This seems like a massive development for the government's drug price reduction policy.
It is. They agreed to dramatically cut the price of blockbuster obesity drugs, like Wegovy and Mounjaro. The new price is set to drop to between $149 and $350 per month.
Wow.
This is being hailed as a major victory. It directly translates into massive affordability differences for patients who rely on these incredibly expensive treatments.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, we need to look at the deep underlying economic stresses that these headlines are masking.
Right. The administration's tariff policy is the perfect example of a really difficult, paradoxical situation.
That's right. I mean, the tariffs are having very real negative domestic impacts. We're seeing job stagnation, especially in manufacturing, retail, and energy.
And rising consumer prices, gas, electricity. We're also seeing reduced tourism, which is linked to both those price hikes and stricter immigration checks.
Yeah, here's the paradox.
Those same tariffs successfully reduced the U.S. trade deficit to its lowest level in 21 months. And the deficit with China, a 21-year low.
So this raises a crucial question about the political calculus, doesn't it? Is the administration prioritizing global optics over immediate domestic relief?
Well, someone is paying the price. And it's domestic consumers and manufacturers who are directly paying the cost of that deficit reduction.
Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve maintained its benchmark interest rate at, 5.25 to 5.50%?
That's right. The FOMC held steady. The bond market was closed for the holiday, but stocks remain open, trying to sort of balance the good news of the shutdown ending with the reality of high interest rates.
And we cannot gloss over the severe social stressors revealed in our sources. They paint a clear picture of financial fragility.
Take the housing crisis.
Okay.
First-time buyers in the second quarter of 2024 were spending a staggering 40% of their pre-tax income just on mortgage payments.
40%. On the mortgage alone. That means there is effectively no room left for anything. Savings, medical bills, retirement.
It points directly to market failure and an unsustainable burden on young families trying to build wealth.
And there's a new infrastructure stressor bubbling up, AI's hidden cost.
The surge in AI-driven data centers is causing an explosion in national electricity demand. And the reason why is that these high-density computing centers require just massive, constant cooling.
And that demand is leading directly to new controversies and rising electricity rate debates all over the country.
Utility companies are struggling to upgrade infrastructure fast enough to handle the sheer volume of power draw required by this AI boom.
Now let's look abroad, where U.S. foreign policy took some truly provocative turns while all this domestic drama was unfolding.
It really did.
The headline that caused the most geopolitical whiplash had to be the Syrian summit controversy.
This was a non-public 2-hour summit. It was held at the White House between President Trump and Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara. And the history here is essential to understand the shock value.
So give us the context. Why is this meeting so deeply provocative?
Well, al-Shara, who was formerly known as al-Julani, was a former leader in an al-Qaeda affiliate.
Linked to the 9/11 attacks.
Yes, and he previously had a standing $10 million U.S. bounty on his head.
Wow.
The meeting signals a dramatic pivot in U.S. policy, moving from counterterrorism targeting to diplomacy. It's a true act of realpolitik.
And it drew immediate, sharp criticism from all sides, including from conservatives in the U.S.
Of course. It fundamentally challenges previous counterterrorism stances and signals a massive shift in engagement in the Middle East.
Meanwhile, U.S. mediators are in Israel to begin Phase 2 ceasefire talks in Gaza.
And these talks are far more complex than the initial agreements. They're focusing on the remaining hostages and the potential for a permanent cessation of hostilities.
Which requires a much deeper level of trust and agreement.
Absolutely. And this backdrop of U.S. policy uncertainty is clearly affecting our allies. Top diplomats from the G7 nations are meeting in Canada, and the sources noted rising tensions over trade, defense spending.
And just the general lack of clarity on U.S. foreign policy in regions like Gaza and Ukraine.
Exactly. We also saw a significant flashing point closer to home. The Venezuelan military signaled preparations for guerrilla response training against a hypothetical U.S. military conflict.
Adding another layer of regional instability.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how this deluge of political chaos and high-stakes diplomacy overlaps with the national observance of Veterans Day.
A day meant for unity and tribute.
It was, of course, marked by the presidential memorial at Arlington National Cemetery, where the president offered thanks to veterans. But it was also a day for powerful advocacy.
The League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, used the holiday to push for accelerated benefit reforms.
They did. They specifically targeted health access, suicide prevention resources, and demanded culturally responsive support tailored for Latino veterans.
And finally, a reminder of that community resilience during the shutdown.
We saw stories of volunteers nationwide stepping up to support furloughed federal workers with food drives, with resources, demonstrating that grassroots action steps in where the government temporarily fails.
So to summarize this deeply contradictory day, we saw historic legislative movement with the end of the shutdown looming, and we saw historic policy shifts like the drop in drug prices.
Yet deep fissures remain beneath the surface. Massive economic inequality, rising housing costs, and these geopolitical controversies that are fundamentally challenging old alliances and policies.
So what does it all mean? We've covered a remarkable set of events, from the Supreme Court affirming rights to a major shift in trade deficits and controversial diplomatic engagement.
Which raises an important question, I think, regarding the future of U.S. elections and voter strategy.
Go on.
The Supreme Court is expected to decide before June 2026 on the contentious case about counting mail-in ballots, specifically the ones that arrive after Election Day but are correctly postmarked.
A huge issue.
It is. So, given the current political environment and the division over election procedures, how might a definitive nationwide ruling on the validity of those late arriving votes reshape the strategies and maybe even the outcome of the 2026 midterm elections? You have something to explore.